I got a comment on my 5% unemployment video asking me how I could go 7 years without working a full time job. And that's very simple. I planned for the first day of my civil service job in April of 2008 like it was going to be my last day at the civil service job. And because I had a plan for my money, I was able to take care of myself for these 7 or so years. And what a lot of people, they don't understand is when you start a job, you really have to set a set of goals for what you want to do with your money. You really have to manage your money. And me being unemployed, for long periods of time before I understood that I needed to have a real plan for my money. So I did not go out and spend money on lunch or consumer items like your Air Jordan tennis shoes or designer clothes. No, I did not spend money on those type of things. I understood that, you know, in today's job market, everything is extremely unstable. So you have to set aside a savings just in case you wind up in a period of long term unemployment. And because I had a contingency plan, I was able to, have money for the future. And I was always, planning for the future. Everything that I did, was with my money was based on investing. I always, set goals for what I wanted to do for my future. I always had a set of goals. And one of the goals that I had, was to invest in publishing the three manuscripts that were sitting in my box. And these were the three books that were based on those three manuscripts. That was All About Maryland, which I published in 2009, the Cassandra Cookbook, which I published in 2008, and The Temptation of John Haynes in 2011. Now, I had originally set a goal to publish the Cassandra Cookbook within 90 days of me working at that civil service job. And I had saved quite a bit of my paychecks. Again, I did not eat lunch, and I kept things to the bare minimum to publish this one book. And by the grace of God, my sister was buying a new computer. She gave me her old computer, and I used it to edit the manuscripts for this book. Because at the time, um, my computer had died. I had a Dell back from 2001, and it died in August of 2007. And from August of 2007 to October of 2008, I did not have a computer of my own. I was using a one that my sister had given me, and it died in September of 2008. So it was a miracle that I was able to get this book published at the time, but I wouldn't have been able to do it without the grace of God and me, setting a goal for what I wanted to do. And I wanted to do this book because, again, it was a book that meant a lot to me, and I really wanted to spend money on something again that wound up making money. And because I wound up, being let go from my civil service job, that really forced me to take a course of action I did not plan on taking course. I mean, the week before I was fired, God had told me to keep going, and I didn't know what He meant by that. But then, I was forced to wind up continuing to persevere with the SJS Direct imprint. And after, I wound up publishing this book, I decided, since the next book I was doing was going to be a screenplay book, I decided instead of going to a print on demand company that I would, go out on my own. And I went out and I just started, contacting, printers like your Lightning Source. I learned about ISBNs. I learned about page layouts. I learned about design, and I was learning this in addition to learning some new skills, like PC repair. And this is what I was doing while I was unemployed. I was out here learning new skills. I was learning page layouts for publishing, cover design for publishing, and I was editing and revising the All About Maryland screenplay, all while I was learning PC repair. And I learned this, back to back, um, back in 2008. And by the beginning of 2009, I had the first book ready for the new SJS Direct imprint, and that was All About Maryland. And this was the screenplay book. This was one of the scripts that was sitting in my box. This was a screenplay I had written about a faded 1990s teen sitcom star who has to go out and reinvent herself after a tragic event. And I went and I laid out the pages for this. I designed the cover for this, and this book got a lot of positive reviews, and a lot of people liked it when it first came out, and it was one of the it was the first book I ever published on my own by myself, um, and it's the first book of the SJS Direct imprint, and while I was still doing that, in addition to the PC repair, publishing this book, I went out and took another civil service exam. And I got an 80 on that exam. And then while I was doing that, I was going out for interviews for the time. And what I would run into at these civil service exams, sadly, were a lot of females, and not just black females, but white females. And I would go to the interview, and they would pretty much, look past me when I was sitting there at the interview. They wouldn't try to ask me any detailed questions. I remember one interview, the woman just got a nasty attitude and didn't even try to ask me any questions, and they would pass me by and go out and hire another female. And I dealt with this from about 2009 to about 2012. And I eventually just said to myself, I'm not going to be able to get anywhere because we have these female gatekeepers at civil service who really don't want to let any type of man in, because every man, they would go to these hiring pools and they would leave empty handed. Most of the people getting hired at these hiring pools were pretty much females, and at the most case, they were usually black females or they were white females. I mean, if a white female came in there and interviewed with somebody, she would get hired like that. Meanwhile, the black female would get second, the Hispanic would get third, and men like myself, we always had to wind up leaving. I remember going to one hiring pool where, you know, they just called us all those guys up and then just sent us home. And that's, what we had to deal with. They would say things like, oh, we have a shortage of jobs. We don't have a lot of positions. And I remember some colleges wouldn't even show up, like a host those college. They wouldn't even show up at these hiring pools. So this is what I had to deal with. And eventually in 2012, I said I spent so much money, going to these things, these civil service things, that I just gave up on it and just decided, to move on. And I did, get my A+ certification also during this time. I got that in 2009, and I tried to apply for a civil service IT position. And what happened with this one was the craziest thing. I mean, they send me one job description, and then when I get to the interview, the HR person is pretty much rewriting things, on the fly, just pretty much saying that he wants something else. And he says he wants an A+ certified guy, but then all of a sudden he's talking about Linux servers and PHP and SQL, and that wasn't in the job description that these guys sent me. And I eventually, got so fed up with civil service that I said I'm just going to walk away from here because I've already spent, hundreds of dollars, not only in these civil service exam fees, but also in bus fare, dry cleaning, and preparing to go to these interviews. And it was just a waste of my time and money to continue spending it, on these interviews that were pretty much not going to go anywhere. Where either they were going to hire some female or they were going to hire some white guy, and I felt, it wasn't worth my time or my money. So I decided to, start focusing a little bit more, on my publishing imprint, because of the job market from 2008 to about, I'd say about 2013 in New York was absolute garbage. It still is absolute garbage. And I went out and tried, to continue focus on expanding things, because after 2011, I had published the last book that was in my manuscript box, The Temptation of John Haynes. Um, and this was the last book in my manuscript box, and with that, I had finished, you know, setting the goal I had set for myself back in 2008. I had published all three of the books that had sat under my bed in the manuscript boxes, and now I had decided, since these jobs, seem to be, either non-existent or, they have these gatekeepers at the door, I decided to focus a little bit more on the SJS Direct imprint. And in 2011, I decided, since I've published The Temptation of John Haynes, and the book got critically acclaimed and readers really liked it, and it looked like it was starting to do some sales, I decided to, invest a little further, and I decided to publish, you know, a new book, and that was the All About Nikki book. I did a preview ebook of this on Smashwords, and there was a lot of positive response to it. Foreigners loved this book, the sneak preview of it, and many came back to continue to buy it. Afterwards, the paperback didn't sell a single copy, but the ebook was fairly strong on this. And this was another screenplay book, but this one featured 13 episodes of an African American sitcom. And the log line I came up for it was called "It's the Fresh Prince of Bel Air meets Clueless," and a lot of people liked it. Um, when I came out with it again, the paperback did not sell a single copy, but the ebook was one of the better sellers that I had. And I just decided, what, since I could not find anything, and I did a lot of, different things. I would apply online because today's job market is very different from what anybody knows today. Yesterday, because I had family members telling me, why don't you go out and pound the pavement and all this other stuff, but nobody does that anymore. People do not go out walking around looking for jobs. It's just not done anymore. If you go to any employer, all they're going to do is tell you to go to their website and apply online. And that's really hard. That really makes it a lot harder to try to find work because with everything online, you're not a person. You're not interacting with people. And that's just the way everything is. Everybody's just going to tell you to either email them a resume or go to apply online. And that's like a brick wall that, prevents a lot of people from finding, full time work. Now, 90% of jobs are done through networking, but most people these days, they try to avoid any sort of social interaction with someone these days, and that's what makes it really, really hard to find work because everybody's just going to tell you to send send a thing to a you know email, or they're going to tell you to apply online. And when it happens when you apply online with certain websites, certain companies, you can only apply like every 90 days, like a Target. And I've applied at Target, what is it, about 8, 9 times in the last couple of years. And they limit you to only one application every 90 days. And I would go, every 90 days, applying there and winding up with nothing. I would go to other, retail websites looking for that job just to put some money in your pocket, and I would wind up with nothing. I would, email people resumes and tailored cover letters and still wind up with nothing. And I'm trying to find a way to, bring some money in during this time, even though I have a savings and I have, I had a savings, I was still trying, try to find a way to money in to bring money in until I got that next full time job, and that was really, one of the big problems I have is like it's hard to find, you know, work, and it's hard to find leads on work because the minute you get a lead on a job, 500 other people get a lead on that same job, and if anybody knows, how hard it was during that economic downturn. It was really, really hard. It's a lot harder. It's really, really hard because you had employers saying crazy things like, "We only hire people who already have a job." This is how cruel some employers were. They were sitting there going, "I'm not going to hire a guy who's been laid off. I'm going to go out and try to find somebody who already has a job," and that really, was really discouraging. I would go to look at the job listings and I would see this, and it would just make me make me just leave the website alone altogether. Um, and it was just really frustrating because you're trying to get that job to get back on your feet or and just to get things together. And here you have an employer putting something out there saying that they're only going to hire somebody who already has a job. And I just said, I looked at things and I said, this is just really frustrating. And another frustrating thing for me with these job listings, where these people would use all this jargon, and then they would, write these unrealistic listings. They would put all this criteria for what they want, and you couldn't write a cover letter for it because some of them, they made absolutely no sense. Some of them were contradictory. I mean, they would say they would want one thing, then they would want something else, and it would just be really difficult. So I spent most of my time, I said it's really hard. I would still look for work, but I spent a lot of other time, trying to get this imprint off the ground because I said, these this God wants me to keep going, and I want to, find a way to make a living for myself until I can find that full time job. So I spent a lot of time, in between looking for work and looking for work and working on books just to buy my time. I didn't want to sit there, just watching TV or anything like that. I mean, I really like to learn, but I'm not a really school kind of guy. I didn't even have no money for school, so I spent my time, learning different skills and different things. You know, I went out and got Robert McKee's story so I could learn a little bit more about screenwriting, and this book was a big help in me writing all about Nikki and, um, you know, writing that book. And that's how I learned a little bit more about the craft of screenwriting, and that was a skill that I picked up in addition to PC repair. Um, and there were other things that I had, and I just learned, and I learned painting as well. I also learned painting as well. I learned a whole lot of other skills that I picked up, and what what I did after 2012, because 2012 was the 10th anniversary of the publication of the first ISIS. So I decided, since I still don't have any work, I decided to continue to expand the SJS Direct brand and the SJS Direct imprint by launching the ISIS series I promised in the first ISIS book. So I went out and wrote and published the first two books in the ISIS series to celebrate the 10th anniversary of ISIS. So I went out and wrote and published Amari's Revenge and The Ultimate Fight to celebrate the 10th anniversary of the ISIS series. And I did that, and it was a good thing that I did that because it did get some sales, it did get some readers, and it allowed me to further expand, on my young adult portion of the imprint. That was a portion that I went to a Harlem Book Fair when I attended as a vendor. An old lady walked up to me and asked me, "Do you have any things for young adults, tweens, and teens?" And I said I didn't have anything at the time. So I spent most of 2011 or so, trying to create those type of products, and that enabled me to, expand my audience. That was when I started, doing ebooks because I had an author friend who asked me to convert her manuscript into an ebook. Not her manuscript, but there was one author that I worked with. I helped turn her manuscript into a full book. I did that job for free, and then I had a best-selling author friend who asked me to take several of her novels and turn them into ebooks, and that was a commission job I did, and that also helped keep me afloat. I did those commission jobs for a while, and I did that for a while. So that was one thing that I did, and then later on I decided to do the YA series, and I did that on Smashwords from 2011, not 2011, but 2012 or so, because I didn't have any material ready until about then, and I did a couple of ebooks. I think the sneakers. I did the ebook version of ISIS and ISIS Trial of the Goddess and Saga of Mastication, a couple of them, and I think that was 2012. Could have been 2011. I don't know, but that's what I did. I did that for the young adult series, and when I did those ebooks, it led to some sales, and from there, I went on to say I'm going to build on that, and then I started doing the ISIS series, and I had somebody, during a while ago, try to attack me about the covers because I usually, you know, draw many of the covers myself, so I don't have a lot of money. I was trying to get these manuscripts out, so I had somebody, give me a lot of heat just about 2014, and that's when I decided, to try to really, step up my game and try to improve the quality of the products that I produced. Plus, my money was running low, so again, out of necessity, I had to go out and create. So I wound up, because I didn't have that much money, and I put a lot of money into the books, and I was trying to keep the imprint afloat. I wound up starting to sell my collectibles on eBay, and I did that because I had a Kickstarter that I had planned for this Isis Wrath of the Cyber Goddess cover. Um, it had failed, and I wound up. I said I really wanted to do this cover. I really wanted to put a quality cover on this book because I really believed in it. So I wound up selling quite a few of my collectibles in my toy collection on eBay, um, to pay for this cover and to just keep making a living. One of the things that I had learned from my brother was about toy collecting and action figure collecting, and it had been a hobby of mine for many years. And I wound up, learning a lot about wealth building and asset building from that hobby. And then I wound up being forced to sell quite a few of my collectibles on eBay to do that. And I'm still selling quite a few now. There is an SJS Direct on eBay, and that's how I also get sales. So that's how I got a lot of sales experience and customer service experience, which is ironic because the librarian who wanted me fired pretty much said I had no sales and customer service experience. And here I am, I've been selling, since the 1990s when I tried to sell my first books. And this guy was saying that, oh, he has no sales and customer service experience. And in the last 2 years, I've gained an exceptional customer service record on eBay. And I've gotten, a lot of positive feedback from customers on books that I have written. So people will sit there and say you have no sales and customer service experience when I have a large background of customer sales and customer service experience in addition to publishing. What a lot of people don't know is that, writers, we have to go out and sell every day. I mean, in order for us to, get people to buy these books, we have to actually sell harder than anyone out there. I know from experience that it's easier to sell an action figure or, a Ninja Turtle pie wrapper than it is to sell one of these books. These books are very, very, very hard to sell because people don't want to spend time reading something because they're afraid that if they read something, it may not be something that they like, it may not be something that they're interested in. And an author really has to go out and sell, and they have to go out and sell, you know, with something as simple as a catchphrase on the back. Like this one, I don't know if you can see it. It says, "She thinks it's her world. Unfortunately, we have to live with her." And we have to take something that small and that simple in order to sell a book like in All About Nikki. We have to take something that small and simple as that to catch you so that you can go and read the synopsis on the back. And that's part of selling that people, don't understand. They think that, a book just stands there on the shelf with a fancy cover and it's going to sell. No, in order that cover may get your attention for a second, but if they're reading the back and there's nothing there to grab them, then nobody's going to buy it. Now, for this book, All About Marilyn, which a lot of women liked, I used a simple catchphrase like "Fame ends at 34, life begins at 35," and I used that because I knew that a lot of black actresses and actresses in general, once they get past over 30, the scripts really don't come in, and that was one of the hooks in the story. And it takes a lot of planning, to come up with something that simple and to get people's attention. But this is what I've been doing, for the past 7 years. I've been trying to build this SJS Direct imprint. A lot of this I did not, again, plan on building right now. I mean, in 2008, when I did the Cassandra Cookbook, I had just planned on doing this book for 2008. I was going to continue to stay with the print-on-demand company that I published this. We're Virtual Bookworm. But because I had lost my job, I was forced to, start the SJS Direct imprint. And All About Marilyn forced me, because All About Marilyn is a screenplay book. I was forced, because of the formatting, to take this into production before it was supposed to produce. I didn't want to publish this until later in 2009, but because of that, I was forced to go into immediate production around 2009 into it, and by about later in 2009, I was forced to publish this. I did not plan on publishing this until much, much later on. I didn't want to do this until about 2010 or so, but I was forced to do it because I really needed money. I really needed to get income coming in, and I wanted to have another book on the market. And I set this goal that I was going to get all these manuscripts that I published printed before my money ran out, and that was a major. That was the plan that I had set, and I was forced to get this book into print, and then I went out and put this book into print, The Temptation of John Haynes, a year later. And I did not plan for this book to have this cover. I had actually paid an artist $400 for another cover, but then the art looked so bad. It looked actually worse than this, so I was forced to, put this art on here. I did not plan on putting this on here, and the sad part is, a lot of people got upset about this cover, talking about it's a lousy cover, but I had planned to put another cover on this, and if I ever got enough money, I would put another cover on this. I would love to, hire a guy like a Bill Walker to do this cover completely over and do this book over, because this is one of my best novels. I really believe in this story. It's a really great story. Some people like All About Marilyn a little better. A lot of women love All About Marilyn, and they love the companion book All About Nikki. But Temptation of John Haynes, that was a book that I learned a lot about writing and a lot about technique and a lot about story models and story paradigms. This was a book that, really, I believe I elevated my craft to the next level on. And, I still apply the techniques that I used in All About Marilyn and All About Nikki in these two books. And I I think I've done a lot in the last 7 years that would make me a valuable asset to employers because I've shown drive, determination, commitment. I've shown that I can solve problems on my own, and that I always try to find a way to do things. I always, with God's help, I always try to find a way to make a way to do things. I mean, to go from a guy who had just I only had when 2008 I only had um, before 2008 I only had one book in print, and that was ISIS. And in 2008, when I was working civil service, these are the only two books I had in print. And from 2008 to 2013, I'm not 2013 to now, I've published all these books plus all these books in the back, and I have, you know, expanded from, one or two titles to next year. I'm getting ready to publish my 50th book that I have written, and I don't understand why employers would not see that as valuable. I mean, again, I have shown that I have a sense of commitment, dedication, determination. I'm a good organizer. I have managed, a schedule for publishing. I have a whole lot of transferable skills. I'm good organization, good time management, good planning, good leadership. Because I not only worked on my books, but I worked with other authors, like the national best-selling author whose ebooks I converted, a student at my college who I helped her format her book, and another author friend of mine, Lawrence Cherry, who I wound up, publishing his books. I published all three of his books. I laid the page layouts for all of his books, and I helped design the covers for all of his books. And that was Commencement, School of Hard Knocks, and The Atonement. And The Atonement just came out this year. And I maintained, a publishing schedule, for this publishing imprint. I mean, in 2013, I published 13 books, and most small publishing houses don't even publish 13 books. And then this was some were in paperback, others were in ebook, and that takes a lot of, again, planning, organization, time management, and communication skills in order to manage, a catalog that large and make sure that books, go out every part of the publishing season. And I targeted, you know, all the book releases for major public periods in the publishing season for 2013. I mean, I went out and I understood when to release books during the summer reading season and also the holiday season. That's when I did the other parts of the Simp trilogy, which were the Manginas, the Misadventures of Captain Savaho, and I think another ISIS series book, and I did like three ISIS series books that year in 2013. In addition to this novel, The Thetas, I did quite a few books that year in 2013, and to say that I published 13 books in one year, that's a very, very, it says a lot, about a testament to my dedication and commitment to publishing books. And I wrote quite a few of them. Larry wrote, I think he wrote one, but most of them were written by me. They were edited by me. The covers were designed by me, and they hit the marketplace. And they did. Like, they don't have Harry Potter sales, but they kind of do all right as self-published books go. But what I'm looking for is a full-time job so that I can continue to build on what I've done and continue to increase the quality, because I want covers like this to be the standard for SJS Direct books, and I can't do that without a full-time job. I've been looking for a full-time job again for 7 years, but most employers, they think I don't have the skills or the qualifications to work for them, and some people say I'm overqualified, some people say I'm underqualified, but I believe I'm a valuable asset to any organization. If you look at all the skills that I bring to the table, I think I could really contribute to somebody's team and make an impact. Because again, if I can do this with next to no money, I wonder what I could do with $1 million budget or $100,000 budget or even a $10,000 budget. I mean, even this year, I was able to do a Kickstarter, and I was able to, hire an artist like a Bill Walko to produce the covers for these ISIS Night of the Vampires and East Team Undercover, which were part of the ISIS East Team crossover. And but all the work on the inside, all the interiors for both the paperback and the ebook, all the interiors in here, all that was designed by me. I did all this, and I learned how to do that again on my own. Um, I taught myself Photoshop elements. I taught myself um, page layouts and programs like Microsoft Word. I taught myself how to design um, book covers. I taught myself all that stuff, and I use all those skills, to do things. And in the 7 years, what I've been doing is I've been again I've been selling the books and then using eBay these days to make a living. But I really do need a full time job to be able to take care of myself, because the money that comes in again only comes every 90 days, and it's very, very slow. It's very slow to bring money in on books, because books are a hard sell. The last 2 months, November and December, have been really rough for me. It's been hard for me to really sell books to readers, especially in genres like African American fantasy fiction and screenplays, and even some nonfiction, because I do nonfiction on men's issues. It's a tough sell out here, because people, they don't like to really read because they're afraid of investing time in a story. But stories are how I make money, and if it's very hard to sell books to people, and you have to have more than one. That's one of the reasons why I write so much every year. I'm always preparing projects. Right now, I'm preparing projects for next year right now, and now I'm planning a Kickstarter to try to pay for the covers for next year's projects, because you know I books again, they're very hard to sell, and you have to have more than one project in production, because if one book doesn't catch on, you need to sell the others. You have to use the others to pay for you know the book that didn't sell, and that's a major challenge, because when you do invest in a book, when you do invest money in publishing a book, it's a big risk, and 90% of all books fail, so you always have to have more than one. That's why I'm always doing you know one or two ISIS series books, or one or two East Team series books, or a nonfiction book like Why 70% of Black Women Are Single, or a Stop Simping, in addition to maybe a screenplay book, or a really risky book like a goth, like a story about African American goth like Spinsterella. These type of stories, they're big risk, but I take that risk because I really believe in them, and I really want to get those books out there, and I really want to share them with readers. And I do this because I really believe in what I'm doing. I really love what I'm doing, and I want to keep doing it, but I need money to do it, and that's why I want to have a full time job. Now, I have worked in addition to that library job at civil service, I was a project manager for an AmeriCorps project way back in 2001 at the Strive Job Readiness Program. So again, I've been applying these management skills that I got from that degree in business way back in 1994, not only in business projects for nonprofits like Strive and but also for myself. And I've also, been working, quite a bit for myself, and I apply these skills to publish, all these books out here. And that's how I've been making a living for the last 7 years by trying to sell books to people, the money that I saved up, and on eBay. And, you know, I'm always trying to work on streams because I understand that, when you're a black man, it's very hard out here, and you can lose a job again like that because somebody is offended by what something you said or something you did, or just you just they just don't like you, or and when you even try to get the interview, there may be people who may not like you. So you have to have a contingency plan, and this is the contingency plan that I had. I had a plan, to save up my money towards investing in things that would make me money, not things that take money. And I still continue to try to invest in things that make money. I mean, revenue streams are something that they don't happen overnight. They take time to develop, they take time to grow. And, all it takes, with writing, the lady with 50 Shades, people gave her, she's a billionaire, and same thing with J.K. Rowling with Harry Potter. All it takes is one book, and a person can you know, go from broke to being a millionaire just like that because it just catches on. I don't know if it'll ever catch on for me like that, but I just keep working at it because God tells me to keep going, and I'm hoping that that something eventually pays off from all this perseverance because I really believe in what I'm writing. I really want to write positive stories for Black people. And I want to present, a different image of Black people. And I really want to, broaden the image of Black people. That's why I go out and write books like your Spinsterellas about your African American Goths, or your Theta is about African American sororities, or I do African American fantasy stories like the ISIS series because I really want to broaden people's perspective of African Americans and the African American experience in my writing. And I also, this is something that I was doing as a hobby, but it's become, like the full time thing I've been doing because this is just, I want to get that full time job, but it's just, these days it's very, very hard to get full time jobs. It's like a nightmare out there because of the bad job descriptions, the HR people. But I'm still trying to persevere, I'm still trying to push. And I'm hoping one day that I eventually find, that full time job that allows me to get my life back on track because I was just about to get my life back on track before, October of 2008. I was starting to make plans, you know, to move out of this apartment, and I really was getting ready to go do things, and but everything got derailed, and I've been trying to get things back on track and get things back to the way it was, and I'm trying to do that, and I did not plan on things going the way they did, but thank God I was able to get many of the goals that I set completed, and I'm hoping to get some more goals that I've set completed. I really would like to do some other types of projects, and I'm hoping that maybe one day I'll be able to do that. But I can only do that, when if I get the opportunity to do that. I'm hoping to get, another full-time job one day so that I can, again, continue to improve the quality of my publications, put those quality covers like this one on there and, make that first impression on readers so that when they look at an SJS Direct imprint book, the first thing they're thinking about is they want to buy it, not, let me think about the cover or let me think about something else. They just go, oh, that Shawn James really makes some quality work. He really makes quality stories. Let me go pick up the new one and, go out and support his work. And, the other reason why I want the full time job is because, you know, you need to have a steady stream of income because again, books are a very unstable stream of income. They come, they go. Sometimes a book will do well for a short period of time. Other times, a book won't do well. And sometimes you write a book and it won't, even catch on. And that's part of it. I mean, a book is a revenue stream, but you also have to have, multiple revenue streams if you hope to, build a base for yourself. And this is something that I'm trying to do, is build that economic base for myself so that, I can move my life forward. And I really do need a full-time job to do that, because I was starting to lay the foundation, and I'm still trying to build on it the best way I can. And I'm not, and I don't really have a lot of money to do things, but I'm still trying to go out and do things with the little money that I have. That's all I have to say for this video. I know it's a long one, but I had to talk about this, and you can comment, rate, and subscribe.